There's a moment in life when you realize that being surrounded by people doesn't always mean you're not alone. You can be in a crowded room, laughter echoing around you, phones buzzing with messages, conversations pulling at your attention, and still feel disconnected. And then there are times when you sit quietly by yourself, no noise, no distractions, no one else around, and suddenly you feel stronger, clearer, more alive. That's the paradox most people miss. We're taught that being alone is something to avoid, that solitude equals weakness, emptiness, or failure. But the truth, being alone is not weakness, it's power. Think about it. Most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid silence. They blast music in the car, scroll endlessly through social media, surround themselves with people who drain them, all because they're terrified of being alone with their own thoughts. Why? Because silence forces you to face yourself. And that's where real power begins. Not in the noise, not in the crowd, not in the applause, but in the quiet. I want you to imagine this for a moment. If everything was stripped away, the job title, the relationship, the circle of friends, the recognition, what would be left? Would you crumble without the noise, or would you still stand strong because you've built your foundation in solitude? That's the question most people never dare to ask. And it's the one that separates those who are easily broken from those who are unshakable. Being alone isn't about isolation, it's about creation. It's where you sharpen your mind, strengthen your spirit, and align with who you really are. Alone time is not punishment, it's preparation. The ones who learn to master solitude are the ones who carry unshakable confidence into every room they walk into. They don't beg for approval. They don't chase validation. They don't collapse when people leave because they've already proven to themselves, I am enough, even when I'm alone. And here's what makes it even more powerful when you no longer fear solitude. You become unstoppable because you can't be manipulated by loneliness. You can't be pressured into staying where you don't belong. You can't be shaken when the crowd doesn't clap. You hold the most dangerous power a person can have, the ability to stand alone. So tonight, I want to flip the script for you. Instead of seeing solitude as emptiness, I want you to see it as fuel. Instead of fearing it, I want you to embrace it. Because being alone is not something to run from. It's something to run toward. That's where your strength is built. That's where your clarity lives. That's where your power begins. When you strip away the noise of the world, when you silence the voices of everyone else telling you who to be, how to act, and what to want, you are left with the most powerful and often most uncomfortable mirror you will ever face, yourself. That is why solitude is so difficult for most people and yet so transformative for the few who embrace it. Solitude is where self-mastery begins, because it forces you into a space where you cannot run, cannot hide, and cannot distract yourself with the chaos of other people's lives. In that quiet space, you learn who you really are, and that knowledge becomes the foundation of your strength. Self-mastery isn't about controlling the world. It isn't about bending others to your will. It's about learning to control yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your habits, and your actions. And there is no better training ground for that than solitude. When you are alone, you confront your own patterns with no escape. You notice the stories you tell yourself, the fears that rise up when no one else is around to silence them, the excuses that whisper in your mind when nobody is watching. That's where you discover the truth. Do you control your mind, or does your mind control you? People who never learn to be alone never truly know themselves. They build identities around the approval of others, around social circles, around external validation. But the moment those things are stripped away, they collapse. They don't know who they are without the noise. Solitude strips you bare in the most uncomfortable way. But it's in that discomfort that you find your edge. That's where you start asking the hard questions. What do I really want? Who am I without the applause? What strengths do I have that nobody else can see? That's the soil where self-mastery grows. Consider history's great thinkers, leaders, and creators. Many of them embrace solitude deliberately. Writers retreat into silence to wrestle with ideas. Inventors isolate themselves to experiment and fail without distraction. Warriors spend time alone to prepare their minds for battle. Why? Because solitude sharpens you. It takes away the easy path of leaning on others for constant guidance or reassurance, and it forces you to build your own inner compass. You stop waiting for the world to tell you what direction to go in, and you start listening to the only voice that truly matters, your own. But solitude isn't just about reflection, it's about discipline. Alone time tests whether you can keep promises to yourself when no one else is holding you accountable. Can you still wake up early when nobody is checking? Can you still pursue your goals when there's no applause? Can you still sit in the silence long enough to do the work that matters? That's self-mastery. It's not glamorous. It's not Instagram-worthy. But it's where champions are built. Think about the athlete training alone in the gym long before the lights, the crowd, or the cameras. Think about the entrepreneur burning midnight oil, sketching plans while everyone else sleeps. Think about the artist who spends hours alone, sketching, erasing, sketching again. That's solitude. That's mastery. And when they eventually step into the spotlight, people call them talented, gifted, or lucky. But the truth is, their strength was forged in the hours no one saw, when it was just them and their commitment. Most people fear solitude because they mistake it for loneliness. But there's a difference. Loneliness is when you crave someone else's presence to feel complete. Solitude is when you realize you are already complete and you choose to spend time alone because it fuels you. Loneliness drains, solitude builds, and when you choose solitude as a space to grow, it becomes your power source. Self-mastery through solitude also means learning to regulate your emotions. In the noise of the crowd, it's easy to get swept away, angered by someone's words, swayed by popular opinion, pressured by groupthink. But when you step into solitude, you begin to notice how emotions rise and fall within you. You learn patience because there's no instant distraction to escape into. You learn focus because there's no one else to carry your attention. You learn discipline because the only one watching you is you. These skills, patience, focus, discipline, become weapons in the real world. When others crumble under pressure, you stay centered because you've trained in solitude. And here's the truth. If you can't stand being alone with yourself, how can you expect to master anything? If you can't sit in silence without reaching for constant noise, how can you expect to stay grounded when life throws chaos your way? Solitude is practice for life. It is where you build the emotional muscles that carry you through storms. The world will always try to keep you distracted because distraction keeps you dependent. Social media, endless news cycles, people pulling at your time, all of it is designed to keep you from sitting with yourself. Because when you actually embrace solitude, you become powerful. You stop chasing approval. You stop needing permission. You start building yourself from the inside out. And once you master yourself, no one can take that power away. So, solitude builds self-mastery not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Because it forces you into the discomfort of facing yourself. Because it demands discipline without applause. Because it teaches you to listen to your own voice louder than the noise of the world. And that mastery, that strength, born in solitude is what gives you the power to stand tall, even when everything else falls apart. Confidence is one of those qualities everyone craves, yet so few people truly embody. And the reason most people never find it is simple. They confuse confidence with validation. They think confidence comes from people cheering you on, from being liked, from fitting in. But the truth is, confidence built on outside approval is fragile. It crumbles the moment the applause stops. Real confidence, the kind that is unshakable, the kind that carries you through storms, doesn't come from others. It comes from independence. It comes from knowing you can stand on your own 2 feet without needing anyone to prop you up. When you are independent, you no longer make choices out of desperation. You don't say yes just to be accepted. You don't chase people out of fear of being alone. Independence frees you from that prison because it teaches you a fundamental truth. You are already enough. And when you know you're enough, your confidence becomes untouchable. Think about how most people move through life. They are constantly scanning for cues, waiting for someone else to validate their decisions, to tell them they're good enough, to give them permission to move forward. That's not confidence. That's dependency, and dependency always leads to fear. Because the moment those external voices go silent, you're lost. Independence, on the other hand, rewires your foundation. You stop asking, "What will they think of me?" and start asking, "What do I think of myself?" That shift alone builds a confidence that nothing and no one can take away. Independence doesn't mean you reject people. It doesn't mean you isolate yourself or refuse help. It means you don't need anyone else to define you. You choose relationships, friendships, partnerships, not because you're terrified of being alone, but because they add to your life. Independence flips the script. Instead of clinging to others for worth, you bring worth to the table. That energy changes everything. People feel it when you don't need them, but choose them. It makes your presence magnetic. Let's be honest. People can sense desperation a mile away. They can feel it when you're trying too hard, when you're bending yourself into shapes just to be accepted. That's not confidence. That's fear dressed up as effort. True confidence says, "I don't have to bend. I don't have to beg. I am whole as I am." And that's a posture that only comes from independence. Consider the way you make decisions. If you're dependent, every decision feels like a gamble. You wonder, what if they don't approve? What if I fail and people laugh? That anxiety drains your confidence before you even start. But if you're independent, you make decisions from conviction. You weigh them against your values, your vision, your goals, not someone else's opinion. That doesn't mean you'll always be right, but it does mean you'll always move with certainty. And certainty is what people read as confidence. Here's the paradox. When you stop needing approval, you usually get more of it. People respect those who stand firm in themselves. They're drawn to the energy of someone who doesn't chase validation because it communicates strength, and that strength doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from independence. It says, "I know who I am and I trust myself to figure it out." Think about the moments in your life when you felt most powerful. Chances are it wasn't when everyone was applauding you. It was when you faced something alone, without backup, and you realized you could handle it. Maybe it was moving to a new city, starting something from scratch, or walking away from a relationship that no longer served you. Those moments didn't just build resilience, they built confidence. Because once you prove to yourself that you can stand alone, the world can never again convince you that you're powerless. Independence also builds confidence because it teaches you to handle rejection. Most people fear rejection because it threatens their sense of worth. If their identity is tied to someone else's approval, rejection feels like annihilation. But if you're independent, rejection doesn't crush you, it clarifies you. It's not a reflection of your worth. It's simply a redirection. That shift in perspective makes you fearless. You stop living in terror of no because you know it doesn't define you. That fearlessness radiates confidence. And let's talk about choices. Independence gives you the ability to walk away. That's one of the most powerful forms of confidence there is, the ability to say, "This doesn't serve me. I will not compromise my values. I will not shrink to fit. I will leave if I need to." People who can walk away from what doesn't align with them carry a presence that cannot be faked. Because everyone knows deep down that dependence makes you tolerate what you don't deserve. Independence makes you demand more. This is why independence is uncomfortable. It requires you to stop leaning on others as a crutch and start trusting yourself. At first that feels terrifying. You'll second guess yourself. You'll feel the urge to run back to the safety of the crowd. But once you stay with it, once you begin making choices based on your own convictions, that fear turns into strength. You start realizing, I can handle this. I don't need the world to clap for me to move forward. And that realization is the seed of unshakable confidence. Independence teaches you that solitude is not a threat. It's a sanctuary. It teaches you that your voice is enough to guide you. It teaches you that you can survive without the constant approval of others. And when you know that, when you truly internalize it, You carry yourself differently. You walk into rooms with presence. You speak with conviction. You make decisions with certainty. That is what unshakable confidence looks like, and it is only possible through independence. So the next time you doubt yourself, the next time you're tempted to bend just to be accepted, ask yourself this: am I moving from dependency or from independence? Because if you want confidence that lasts, confidence that doesn't waver when people disapprove, confidence that stands firm no matter what, you won't find it in the crowd. You'll find it in your independence. And once you have that, nothing can shake you. When you're constantly surrounded by people, distractions, and noise, your mind is never truly free. Every conversation, notification, and obligation pulls your attention in different directions. And while it feels normal, maybe even necessary, it comes at a cost. You can't think deeply, you can't create fully, and you can't work with your highest level of focus. That's why aloneness is so powerful. It's in solitude that your mind finally has room to stretch, to explore, to build. It's in the absence of distraction that your productivity and creativity can reach their peak. Focus is not just about paying attention, it's about energy. Every time you divide your attention, your energy fragments. It becomes harder to think clearly, to make decisions, and to execute on your goals. When you are alone, you reclaim that energy. You are no longer performing for anyone, no longer entertaining anyone, no longer reacting to anyone else's agenda. You can give yourself entirely to the task at hand. That's where aloneness turns into power, because focus is the currency of achievement, and solitude is the vault that protects it. Consider some of the world's greatest minds and creators. Many of them deliberately sought solitude because they knew that productivity and innovation don't thrive in chaos. Writers retreat to quiet rooms. Inventors spend hours alone, tinkering. Entrepreneurs isolate themselves to think strategically. The common thread is this: aloneness removes interference, allowing your mind to do what it was made to do. And the results speak for themselves. When you embrace aloneness, you learn how to structure your time. You discover how to block distractions, prioritize what really matters, and dive deeply into work without interruption. This kind of concentration is a skill, and like any skill, it must be practiced. Sitting alone with a single goal, without the noise of outside influence, forces your brain to build that skill. You learn patience, persistence, and the satisfaction of seeing something through, from start to finish, without seeking constant validation or approval. Aloneness also sharpens creativity. When you are constantly surrounded by other people's opinions, habits, and expectations, your mind unconsciously adapts to theirs. You begin to color inside the lines they've drawn instead of creating your own. But when you are alone, you reclaim your original perspective. You can think in new ways, explore ideas without judgment, and push boundaries that feel impossible when someone else's voice is always present. Solitude removes the pressure to conform, and that freedom is where breakthroughs are born. Focus and productivity are not just about doing more, they're about doing better. When your mind is calm and your environment is quiet, your decisions improve. You notice the subtle connections that were invisible before. You have the mental bandwidth to plan strategically rather than react impulsively. You can assess risks, anticipate challenges, and innovate solutions. Aloneness gives you that bandwidth because it removes unnecessary noise, leaving only clarity. There's another element to this power: accountability to yourself. When you work alone, the results are yours, no one else's. You can't blame others for distractions or delays. You can't hide behind collective effort. Aloneness forces you to step up and own your outcomes. That responsibility is not a burden, it's training. It strengthens your discipline and your ability to execute at a high level. Every time you produce something alone, you reinforce the belief that you can create, solve, and achieve without depending on anyone else. That's a confidence multiplier that few people ever experience. The modern world fights against this naturally. Social media, constant messaging, and endless obligations are designed to fragment your attention. But the moment you intentionally carve out time alone. You reclaim control. You choose your focus instead of letting it be chosen for you. That choice alone is transformative. When you stop scattering your energy on noise and invest it in meaningful work, the results compound over time. Productivity becomes not just output, it becomes mastery. Aloneness also teaches you how to handle boredom and discomfort. When you're alone, you can't escape your own mind. That can be intimidating at first. Your thoughts may wander, doubts may surface, fears may rise, but the longer you stay with it, the stronger your mental focus becomes. You learn how to guide your attention instead of letting it be hijacked. You train yourself to sit with tasks that are challenging, knowing that the reward comes not from instant gratification, but from sustained effort. That mental fortitude is a secret weapon in any high-achievement life. Finally, aloneness amplifies efficiency. When you're not managing the emotional energy of others, not catering to social expectations, and not reacting to external pressures, your work becomes streamlined. You can make decisions faster, execute tasks with precision, and maintain momentum without interruptions. Productivity is no longer scattered. It's exponential. The irony is that most people avoid being alone because they mistake it for loneliness. But the truth is, aloneness is not emptiness. It is power. It's the space where focus sharpens, where creativity flourishes, and where productivity reaches its peak. It's the environment where self-discipline, clarity, and resilience converge to produce extraordinary results. The people who learn to embrace it don't just get more done, they become unstoppable forces of action because they have learned how to channel their energy without distraction. So, if you want to achieve at the highest level, if you want your mind to think clearly, if you want to create with precision and impact, you must learn to be alone. You must train your attention, reclaim your energy, and master the art of aloneness. Because when you do, you don't just work, you excel. You don't just think, you innovate. You don't just live, you thrive. Resilience is not something that is handed to you. It is not taught in classrooms or printed in books with step-by-step instructions. True resilience is forged in the quiet, solitary moments when the world isn't watching, when no one is there to catch you if you fall, and when the only person you can rely on is yourself. Solitude is the gym where resilience is trained. It is the space where your inner strength is tested, shaped, and ultimately solidified. Because when you are alone, you are forced to face life on its own terms. Without distractions, without excuses, without crutches. Most people avoid solitude because they fear what it will reveal. They are terrified to be alone with their thoughts, their fears, their regrets, and their doubts. They don't want to confront the uncomfortable truths about themselves or their circumstances. But it is in facing these truths head-on, without hiding behind anyone else, that resilience grows. Solitude strips away illusions and forces you to stand on your own 2 feet. And when you survive that, you learn an essential lesson. You are stronger than you believe. When you are alone, there is no one to shield you from your own failures or setbacks. You cannot blame anyone else for what goes wrong. You cannot hide behind the successes of others. The moment you step into solitude, you become fully accountable for your life, your choices, and your outcomes. That accountability is uncomfortable at first, but it is precisely what builds resilience. Every time you confront a challenge alone, every time you navigate a storm without support, you prove to yourself that you can endure, adapt, and persevere. Solitude also allows you to process emotions fully. In the chaos of life, it's easy to suppress feelings, to distract yourself with noise, social obligations, or constant activity. But emotions that are ignored do not disappear. They fester. When you sit with yourself in solitude, you give yourself the chance to feel deeply, to process pain, to grieve, to reflect. This emotional clarity is the backbone of resilience, because it teaches you that you can survive the full range of human experience. You learn that pain is not permanent, that discomfort is temporary, and that you are capable of moving forward even when life feels unbearable. Think about those who have endured great challenges in life, leaders, pioneers, creators, and warriors. Many of them spent long stretches alone, confronting difficulties that no one else could solve for them. They faced isolation, rejection, and hardship head-on. They had to learn to rely on themselves because no one else could carry them through. That is what resilience looks like in practice. It is the ability to confront adversity without collapsing, the ability to rise again when circumstances seem impossible, and the ability to trust that you have what it takes to endure, even when no one is there to validate your strength. Solitude also gives you the space to reflect and learn from your failures. When you are alone, you can examine what went wrong without the distortion of outside voices. You can take responsibility, identify patterns, and make the necessary adjustments. This reflection is critical for resilience because it transforms setbacks into lessons. It transforms obstacles into opportunities for growth. The person who never spends time alone may repeat the same mistakes over and over, blaming others or circumstances. The person who embraces solitude learns to extract wisdom from every hardship, strengthening their ability to navigate future challenges. Resilience born in solitude is also about self-trust. When you face life alone and come out stronger, you develop a confidence that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. You learn to rely on your own judgment, your own strength, and your own inner resources. No one can betray, abandon, or disappoint you in the same way if your foundation is built on self-reliance. That self-trust is a form of invincibility. It is what allows you to face uncertainty with courage and to take risks, knowing that, regardless of the outcome, you have the ability to handle whatever comes next. And perhaps, most importantly, solitude teaches you patience and perseverance. Life rarely unfolds according to plan. Challenges often arrive unexpectedly, testing your endurance and patience. When you are alone, you learn to navigate delays, setbacks, and frustrations without looking for immediate relief from others. You develop the inner discipline to continue moving forward, step by step, even when the path is unclear. This sustained effort in solitude is the crucible of resilience, because it teaches you that strength is not about speed, it is about endurance. Solitude also builds emotional independence. Most people's resilience is fragile because it depends on external support, friends, family, partners, or mentors to buoy them up in difficult times. But when you cultivate resilience through solitude, you learn that your emotional stability does not have to rely on anyone else. You can stand firm in the face of adversity, not because you are shielded by others, but because you have developed the capacity to regulate your emotions, maintain perspective, and respond with strength. This independence is a profound source of power. Finally, resilience in solitude prepares you for the unpredictability of life. Life will inevitably throw curveballs, loss, failure, betrayal, illness, and disappointment. The person who has spent time alone confronting their own fears and limitations is far better equipped to handle these events with grace and determination. Solitude trains you to face uncertainty without panic, to adapt without losing composure, and to rise after each fall with renewed strength. In essence, it gives you a superpower, the ability to endure and thrive no matter what life throws at you. In the end, resilience is not something you are born with. It is something you build, piece by piece, in the quiet moments when no one is watching. It is forged in solitude, in reflection, in endurance, and in self-trust. Those who embrace solitude do not fear hardship. They see it as a necessary part of growth. They do not crumble when life tests them. They rise. And the power they gain from being alone, from learning to rely on themselves, and from mastering their inner world, is unshakable. So if you want to cultivate true resilience, you must learn to embrace solitude. You must be willing to stand alone, face your fears, process your emotions, and confront life on your own terms. Because resilience is not built in crowds, applause, or comfort. It is built in the quiet, solitary moments where you have no choice but to discover just how strong you really are. True power begins when you stop performing for everyone else and start showing up fully for yourself. Most people live their lives reacting to outside influence, chasing trends, seeking approval, and bending themselves to fit what the world expects. They are constantly measuring themselves against others, adjusting their decisions to fit someone else's definition of success, and silencing their own voice in the process. But when you embrace alone time, something remarkable happens. You reconnect with yourself. You align with your values, your vision, and your purpose in a way that is impossible when the noise of the world dominates your mind. Alone time is not emptiness. It is the crucible where your truest self emerges, and it is where power is born. When you are alone, you remove all the external pressures that distract you from your own voice. There is no one to impress, no one to entertain, no one to validate your choices. In this quiet, stripped-down state, you are forced to confront what you actually want, what you actually believe, and who you actually are. Alignment starts with awareness. It starts with listening to your own heart without interference. The clearer you become about your own values and desires, the less likely you are to compromise or settle for less than what you deserve. This clarity is the foundation of authentic power because it frees you from living according to anyone else's expectation. Alignment is more than just knowing what you want. It's living in a way that is consistent with it. Alone time gives you the space to evaluate whether your daily actions, habits, and decisions reflect your true priorities. When you are constantly surrounded by other people, it is easy to fall into patterns that do not serve you, saying yes when you should say no, overcommitting to obligations that drain you, or following paths that feel safe but unfulfilling. Solitude allows you to examine these choices critically and make adjustments that bring your life into harmony with your inner truth. When your actions align with your values, you move through the world with a sense of certainty and purpose that cannot be shaken by external forces. Alone time also sharpens your intuition. When you are not distracted by the opinions, judgments, or expectations of others, you can hear the subtle nudges of your own instincts. You start to notice patterns, opportunities, and risks that were previously clouded by noise. This intuitive clarity allows you to make decisions from a place of deep wisdom, rather than reactive impulse. The more aligned you become, the more naturally your choices reflect your authentic self, and the less you are swayed by the chaos of the outside world. Alignment gives you a compass that points to your highest path, and alone time is the practice that hones it. Consider the people who have achieved true mastery in their lives. Many of them intentionally cultivate periods of solitude to reconnect with themselves. They understand that the opinions and pressures of the crowd are fleeting and often misleading, but the voice of their own intuition is consistent and reliable. Alone time becomes a tool for recalibration. It allows them to step back, evaluate their trajectory, and make decisions that reflect their highest priorities. This is how alignment translates into power. When you move intentionally, rather than reactively, your energy is focused, your confidence is unshakable, and your impact is magnified. Another critical aspect of alignment through solitude is emotional integrity. When you are alone, you face your own thoughts and feelings without distraction. You can process experiences fully, release grudges, and acknowledge your fears and desires honestly. This emotional clarity strengthens your decision-making and frees you from the internal conflicts that weaken many people. When your emotions and actions are in harmony, you operate from a place of authenticity. People sense this alignment. They can feel when someone is grounded in their own truth, and it creates an invisible force that commands respect without needing to assert dominance. Alone time also allows for creative and strategic thinking that is difficult to achieve in the noise of social interaction. When you are alone, you can explore ideas freely, plan without interference, and dream without limits. This focused mental space is where innovation is born and where your personal vision can take shape without compromise. Alignment gives structure to this creativity. It ensures that the energy you pour into your goals is consistent with your true desires rather than diluted by the expectations of others. Moreover, alignment fosters resilience and inner peace. When you know who you are and what you stand for, you are less susceptible to external pressure, criticism, or rejection. You can navigate setbacks with confidence because your foundation is internal, not dependent on approval from outside sources. Alone time strengthens this internal foundation by providing space for reflection, self-assessment, and recalibration. The more aligned you become, the less reactive and more proactive you are, and the more your energy becomes a force that attracts the right opportunities, people, and circumstances into your life. Finally, alignment through solitude teaches patience and trust. Life rarely unfolds exactly as planned, and the more you are aligned with your inner truth, the more capable you are of flowing with life, rather than resisting it. Alone time allows you to sit with uncertainty, to listen deeply to yourself, and to act from a place of calm assurance. This patience, coupled with clarity, makes your presence magnetic. You no longer chase outcomes desperately. Instead, you create conditions where what you truly want is drawn to you naturally. In essence, alone time is not a withdrawal from the world. It is a return to yourself. It is the space where your true values, purpose, and vision come into focus. It is where your intuition is sharpened, your creativity is amplified, your emotional clarity is strengthened, and your resilience is solidified. Alignment with yourself is not passive. It is active power. It is the quiet, deliberate cultivation of your own authority, presence, and energy. When you embrace solitude and use it to align with yourself, you become unstoppable. Your actions, choices, and presence carry weight because they are rooted in truth. You no longer move according to the whims of others, but according to the certainty of your own inner compass. Alone time is the forge where power is tempered. The more you invest in it, the stronger, clearer, and more aligned you become. And that alignment radiates outward, influencing every area of your life, your decisions, your relationships, your career, and your impact on the world. The people who master the art of being alone are not lonely. They are powerful. They are clear. They are confident. They are unshakable. And that is the ultimate reward of solitude. The ability to live a life that is fully, unapologetically yours. At the core of everything we've explored today lies a single powerful truth. Being alone is not weakness. It is power. It is the space where you confront yourself, sharpen your mind, strengthen your spirit, and discover who you truly are. The world will try to convince you that solitude is something to fear, that dependency is safety, and that validation must come from others. But those who understand the true value of being alone know the secret: strength, clarity, confidence, resilience, and alignment all grow in solitude. Every pillar we've discussed points to the same reality. Solitude builds self-mastery, because you learn to govern your thoughts, emotions, and actions without leaning on anyone else. Independence creates unshakable confidence because you no longer chase approval. You become enough on your own. Aloneness sharpens focus and productivity, giving you the mental space to create, innovate, and execute at the highest level. Resilience is born in solitude because facing life alone teaches you to endure, adapt, and rise stronger with every challenge. And finally, alone time aligns you with yourself, connecting you to your values, vision, and purpose, so your energy moves intentionally, not reactively. This is why being alone is not a punishment, it is preparation. It is the training ground for the kind of power that cannot be taken away, the kind of confidence that cannot be shaken, and the kind of life that cannot be dictated by others. When you embrace solitude, you learn to stand tall in your own truth, to trust yourself in the face of uncertainty, and to carry your energy in a way that draws the right opportunities, people, and experiences into your life. So stop fearing alone time. Stop running from silence. Stop seeking permission from the world to be yourself. Step into solitude with courage, because that is where your power lives. When you do, you will discover that you don't just survive. You thrive. You don't just endure. You grow unstoppable. You don't just exist. You become the architect of your own life. Fully aligned, fully empowered, fully alive. Being alone is not emptiness. Being alone is not weakness. Being alone is mastery. Being alone is freedom. And being alone is the power that transforms everything you touch into clarity, confidence, resilience, and purpose. The choice is yours. Continue leaning on the noise of the world, or step into the quiet, embrace yourself fully, and unlock the power that has been waiting inside you all along.